know my name.
Don't want to know who I'm looking at.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the 1996 slasher horror classic, Scream. The film is directed by the late, great Wes Craven, written by Kevin Williamson, and it stars Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, David Arquette, Skeet Ulrich, and Drew Barrymore. Now the film focuses on Neve Campbell's character, Sidney Prescott. 1 year previously, she lost her mother, who was brutally murdered. She's just getting over that shock when a new killer called Ghostface emerges in her hometown, starting to take out her friends and pretty much anybody else. It then turns out that this killer has a real connection to her and her past, and it becomes a fight for survival. Right. What are my thoughts on Scream? Well, I was inspired to start watching the Scream films again from watching and reviewing on this channel very, very recently a film called Sick, which is a slasher film. It's just been released, and it was written by Kevin Williamson. And that reminded me really of the Scream films, because Kevin Williamson at the time when he wrote this and this film came out, I mean, he was like the toast of Hollywood. You know what I mean? He could do no wrong in regards to writing horror, certainly for a few years anyway. And it kind of, because I really did quite enjoy Sick, and it's a film I do recommend, guys, if you haven't seen it. I thought, you know what, I'm going to go back and watch the Scream films. I do have them all. The only one I don't have is the newest one that came out last year, and I haven't even watched that. I've watched the first 3 Screams, but I haven't watched the last 2, and I know there's another one coming out this year. So I thought I would catch up with this franchise. It's a long time since I've seen the Scream films. I do generally like slasher films. Well, I like Halloween films with Michael Myers and some other slasher films. I'm not a fan of the Friday the 13th films, though. Not especially. I think they're okay, but they're not really for me. So, but I do remember I've always enjoyed these films ever since I was young, most of the Scream films anyway, so I thought I'd revisit them. And I have to say, this film has aged really, really well. It's still really effective. Even though you could see, I mean, this film is really what sparked all like this meta stuff that came out that they kept putting in movies following this, because this film kept referencing film and all that kind of stuff. It had loads of clever horror bits and pieces thrown into the film, for fan service, all this kind of stuff. I mean, it was a dream for horror fans, this film, when it came out. It was very, very clever what it did. Now, to someone who'd never seen this and they started watching it now, they might kind of think, oh, really? We've seen this a million times. Well, at the time, you really hadn't seen anything like this when it came out. It absolutely, it didn't just breathe new life into horrors, and especially slasher horrors. It absolutely put a rocket up its arse, you know what I mean? It just, made them so popular again. Slasher films, which is probably part of the reason, Halloween H2O came out a couple of years later, and we got all the Scream sequels and so on and so forth. I Know What You Did Last Summer and all this kind of stuff. They just kept coming and coming and coming, sort of thing, following this film. They just exploded the horror genre, especially the slasher genre, after this film came out. And it's really, really fun to watch. Now, what I really enjoyed watching this film, and I have seen it a few times in the past, but it's probably well over a decade, I suspect, since I last saw it, is knowing the outcome and knowing who is who in this film, watching it again, and you're kind of like, yes, I see that. Because you know who the kind of killers are. When you watch it this time, so you can see their body language, you can see the eye contact that they make with certain characters, and their interactions and things like that, and you're kind of like, how did I not spot that first time around? You kind of think to yourself, I really wasn't paying attention, was I? But the clues are really all there, and it's fun, it's exciting, it is genuinely scary at times, it is quite brutal at times. And I think the real stroke of genius of this film is the intro. I mean, initially, Drew Barrymore, my understanding is anyway, that Drew Barrymore was actually cast as Sidney Prescott. And then they kind of changed it up because they realised that by putting Drew Barrymore in that opening, in the prologue sort of thing, and then killing off her, because she was a known actress at the time. She was probably, the most famous name in this film at the time, apart from maybe Courtney Cox. To kill her off like that, it was like a real shock to the audience. So it was cleverly done in a sense of they had Drew Barrymore's name on the poster and her face on the poster and stuff like that, and then they kill her off in like the opening act, and you're kind of like, oh my god, that was quite brave. So it was smart and clever what they did. It was also smart and clever to kind of, introduce all these characters, but it doesn't swarm you with characters. And I think one of the things that modern films get so wrong, especially in the horror genre, is they give us characters that A, are unlikable, and B, are just not that interesting. Whereas pretty much everybody here in this film is interesting in some way, and they're obviously well performed, but they're well written as well. They've all got their own little personalities, their own little personality traits sort of thing. But there's none that you would come away and think were really unlikable or anything like that. And then you've got, I think, some really clever casting going on here. I think Matthew Lillard almost steals this film. And for some, he perhaps does. Because he's so great in this film. He's funny, but when you need him to be as well, he's very, very sinister as well. But he's just so good. And a lot of his lines were ad-libbed and they kind of were left in. Some of the stuff, I think that the line he says, "My parents are going to be so mad with me," was left in. That was just ad-libbed by Matthew Lillard, and Wes Craven loved it. It made him laugh, so he left it in. So I think this is a 90s classic, a slasher classic, a horror classic, and it spawned a really popular franchise that have, generally speaking, been massively popular over the years. And we've seen how popular, because last year it was successfully revived, and we've got another one this year. So I'm looking forward to checking out all the Scream films. I'm going to review all the Scream films on this channel, and then look forward to the new one that is coming this year. So let me know in the comments what you think of the Scream films, and I will, of course, be back with more reviews and content on the channel very, very soon.